Hey everyone, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Aspire. Today we are going to talk about how you can aspire to succeed by building wealth. Today, my guest speaker is Moses Henry, who has inspired me to take a closer look at my finances to build wealth. And I hope that he can do the same for you and give his perspective on what wealth is all about and to ensure that you and your family members are set up to leave behind a legacy where generations after them can build off of. So, hey, Moses.
Hello, how are you?
I am good. I am good. Thank you again for taking the opportunity to come on to Aspire and talk about this.
Absolutely. I'm excited.
Well, good, good. To kind of just start everything off, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Wow, that's such an open-ended question, but I'll try. Okay, my name is Moses Henry. I am currently, in terms of employment wise, I'm actually a community lending officer with Regions Bank, meaning I basically provide mortgages and home loans to, generally speaking, low to moderate income individuals and families. Um, Prior to that, I've kind of been in the banking world probably now a little bit over 20 years. And prior to that, believe it or not, I was a probation and parole officer with the state of Florida, and I manage state contracts. Yeah, so I do have a background in law enforcement. That's a kind of a drastic thing. I'm a family guy. Been married 33 years.
Awesome.
To me, but yeah, no, it is 33. I have
Is that right?
two grown daughters, and kind of here I am.
Here you are. Here
Here
you
I am.
are.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. No, I think that your expertise can really help, especially since we've had conversations before and you're like, wait, do you have this together? I need you to get this
Right,
together.
right, right.
So essentially, how would you define the word success or wealth and what all does it entail?
Wealth, to me, when I think about wealth, I think about those assets
Okay.
that we are able to accumulate, that we are able to pass down to future generations. That to me is wealth. Certainly, you have people that make money, and they're living comfortable and they have a nice car and a nice house and a two-car garage and that sort of thing. However, they're not able somehow to pass those things and that wealth down to other generations that are coming after them, meaning they just because you might be on title to a house doesn't mean it's not mortgaged up to the hilt, you know.
Right.
So to me, when I say wealth in terms of real estate, it's property that you have equity in, and equity is of course the difference between the value of your home and what you own on it. And say that's where most wealth is created, and not only in this country but worldwide.
Okay. Okay. So essentially, for you, who inspired you or what inspired you to just build the ins and outs of your own wealth?
Well, and you know the funny thing about wealth is I don't feel like I'm there, even though I guess on paper, you know, your net worth it is obviously there.
Hmm.
But I think what has inspired me is because I have been able, and I have been able to build upon what previous generations have left for me. So, for example, I have property in Tallahassee, not property that I bought, but property that was left to me that has a considerable amount of equity in it. Well, my great grandmother and her sons were able to accumulate that property, and all in all, it's like over 200 acres,
Oh, wow.
and they were able to not only buy it, and but to actually maintain it and to grow on it, and to it's all pretty much zoned agricultural, and they have been able to leave it now. Granted, not all of it is left now, but quite a bit of it is still virtually intact, and I think that was a pretty major accomplishment, considering that in all likelihood she was from all indications I can find out through research, he was probably a slave up until the age of 10.
Wow.
Right, right. So that in and of itself is a heck of a legacy, and I know I'm not alone because I know there are other African American landowners. The challenge is maintaining that property, because a lot of it is getting picked off through taxes, and if you don't know, you don't know, and so that's my thing is to increase the knowledge of what it takes to maintain that land ownership and property ownership.
Because the very first thing people want to do is just they say, oh my goodness, all this land, let me go ahead and sell it. And then
Right.
what?
Cash in. That's
Mhm.
it. Or they lose it. There are a lot of people, unfortunately, that get involved in things such as reverse mortgages. And, if you don't know much about that, it's a heavily regulated industry, but there are a lot of people that have, for one reason or the other, gotten into these reverse mortgages where the bank is basically becoming or getting ownership of your property, and under the pretense that, well, you can live in it for the rest of your life, you'll never have to make another mortgage payment, and we're going to give you a lump sum and you can stay in your house. And they get that lump sum, and they're not really fully understanding the fact that, number one, you got to still pay the taxes on that property, you still got to pay the homeowner's insurance on that property, and you still got to pay the property taxes, and you got to pay the upkeep of that property. So if those things aren't done, then the banks are going to swoop in, they're going to take that property. Or if something happens to you or the person who's done the reverse mortgage, basically the bank is going to, at that point in time of your dying, the bank is going to become owners of that property, and the heirs really are left with nothing.
Wow.
Yeah, in a lot of instances, yeah. I'm going through that right now with a piece of property, and I go over quite often to visit the property, and I notice little for sale signs, and I'm like, where did that come from? So, and it happens. It happens a lot. I get calls as a mortgage professional a lot. Number one, they want to know, well, do you do reverse mortgages? And I don't. Like I said, it's a very heavily regulated industry, and most banks don't do them, but there are a few companies that actually specialize in reverse mortgages. But I've known quite a few seniors that have gotten involved in that process, and in a sense, they're basically giving up their property for roughly about 60% of the value.
Like you said, you don't know what you don't know.
When you don't know, you don't know. Right, right. And unfortunately, a lot of times it's seniors that are being basically taken advantage of because they don't really understand. All they hear is, I don't have to make another mortgage payment.
And they'll take that.
And they'll take and a lump sum. Right, right, exactly.
And they'll spend it too, as
Right.
opposed to trying to save it. It would be understandable if they did take that lump sum and put it and invested it in something else, but that's not likely.
Yeah, but a lot of times, Rochelle, it's it's family members that are pushing them to do it, and it's just to me it's just I don't like them. I don't particularly care for them. I just I don't understand for the life of me why they're allowed to even do them.
Interesting. That's
Right.
a topic within itself that I
It
really
is.
don't
It
know
really
about,
is.
and I had no idea until you really mentioned it.
Yeah.
You don't hear that. You just hear mortgages, point blank.
You do, but it is a reverse mortgage, and it, like I said, either they give you a lump sum
Mhm.
and you stay in the house. Like if you're 70 years old, 75, 80 years old, and somebody's offering you the opportunity to walk away with 65, like say your house is worth 100,000, 200,000, 65% of the value, you get it all in a lump sum, or you might even get it in monthly payments, and you don't have to make another dime as far as a mortgage payment, but you still have to pay the property taxes, and you still have to pay the insurance. And if something happens to that house, you have to pay to maintain it.
It's not worth it.
I think not.
Wow. So
Right.
with all of that, what advice would you give to the younger generation for building wealth?
For building wealth is okay. Number one is invest in, and you're going to think it's a plug because that's what I do, but I say invest in real estate as soon as you possibly can.
Okay.
Because if you are under 30, for example, and you have a 30-year mortgage, for example, then chances are you're going to be out of that mortgage at 60 or under. Because if you're paying more on that mortgage or you have anything less than a 30-year note, then you're going to pay it off and you're going to be relatively young having no mortgage payment. Okay, and hopefully you have a ton of equity because let's face it, everybody's trying to get in, especially in Florida. This market is like red hot. Okay, so I would say investing in real estate as early as possible. Secondly, if you work on a job that offers you a 401k, um, and especially if they're matching in any way, shape, or form, I would say maximize that as soon as you possibly can. Because if here again, if you're under 30 and you are saving, let's say $300 a month systematically and on time as scheduled, every time you get paid, you're making enough money to where you're putting $300 into your 401k. By the time you reach retirement age of 65, you will be a millionaire if the market does in the future what it's done historically.
Gotcha.
And that's not a lot. $300, the average person probably blows at least $100 just eating out and doing some little things. It shopping, yeah. It takes just a few tweaks here or there, and you'd be surprised you could be at $300. It's being very disciplined, embracing the concept of budgeting as early as possible. And I wish I could speak to my younger self because I would be a multimillionaire probably by now.
That would be amazing if, like you said, I think a lot of companies are doing the best that they can to tell employees to max out because
Max out.
they're advising and saying, hey, we will match up to this percent,
Right,
plus even put in 2 to 3% more.
right,
So
right,
take it.
right, right. And like I said, $300 is not a high bar. Most people, if you really focus on it, I guarantee you, most people are spending at least that, blowing, I should say, not spending, blowing that on just things that they really don't have to. But you do have to live, and I get it. It's a balancing act. You want to have fun. You want to, enjoy the things. And we as a society have somewhat of a sense of entitlement. I work hard and I deserve it, and that's fine. But think about the future. It makes no sense to do all of the things that we do to maintain our healthy bodies and to be in good physical shape. And imagine being that 75-year-old person that's physically healthy and financially sick.
Mm.
Mm. Right. You wanted to go hand in. I want to be that senior that is 75 and I can still travel, jump up and go to New York, jump up and go to London or do whatever I want to do. I like traveling, so that's why I said jump up. But
Yes, we do.
those are the things we want to do that we're not necessarily able to do while we're young and grinding and trying to make it from day to day. But at some point in time, you want to stop working for your money and your money to start working for you.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Right.
That is a good one. I think that that's a struggle for a lot of people that are my age. And to be honest with you, they try to teach you the budgeting aspects and how all that stuff works, but it doesn't really hit you until you yourself have to start paying your own bills and you see, oh my goodness, I got all these student loans and they're giving me all these money and scholarships and I'm going to max out my refunds and get as much money as I possibly can so I can spend it now.
Right.
About saving later.
Right. 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 And from a spiritual standpoint, and I don't want to get too deep into that, but I will say this, just from a personal level, I don't think my finances really got where I wanted them to be until I started embracing the concept of tithing. And
Mm.
so when you start really looking at it, and I actually had to start looking at different factors and doing my research even on that, because if you think about it, tithing is a thing of discipline.
Right,
Okay.
right.
And so if you're able to be disciplined enough to do that and to commit to that, you realize that tithers are in less debt. They have more disposable income. I can't explain it. I cannot put my finger on it and say, hey, this is what it is. But I just know for me, that's when it all seemed to have fallen in line.
But to your point, discipline and dedication. If you're
It
doing
does.
something along that
And
line, it's all
and
going to
that's what
help you.
and you have to do that with your budget. Yeah. And it forces you when you have that mindset.
It's a really good point. I like that little plug. That's a good point.
Right.
So that's the advice for the younger generation. What about the older generation for building wealth when they feel like it might be too late for them?
Well, it's not too late, but I'll tell you, um, one of the things that I have done when I took a brief hiatus from the mortgage and banking industry when the market took a significant downturn back in like '08, '09. I mean, the market really tanked. And I took a hiatus away and I stepped away from banking for about 2 years because I had a nonprofit agency to approach me about managing their financial stability team. So, with that entailed getting certifications in credit counseling, financial counseling, student loans, and housing. So, I was certified in all four of those categories. And some of the saddest financial counseling sessions that I had were with senior citizens because their income, they're unlike someone who's younger, who's working, they don't have the ability to earn more income.
Mm.
Usually it's a physical limitation or something. So let's say you're on Social Security, which is fixed, or a pension that's fixed, and your spending is out of control. It doesn't take long before you're faced with bankruptcy. And so, even at the age of being a senior citizen, you still have to come up with a plan. And I tell people, um, I don't care who you are, what stage in life you are, you have to have some immediate goals, financial goals. Okay. You have to have some short term goals. Those are usually the things you want to accomplish within the next 1 to 3 years.
Okay.
Okay. And then you want to have long term goals, which are 5 years or more. Okay, so if I'm a senior and I have a long-term goal, and I am a senior actually, but I'm still working. Okay, I mean, I'm still classified as a senior because I'm 60. However, I'm not 65 to where I'm ready to retire and start drawing off of or spending money that I had saved or getting Social Security or getting a pension and all of that kind of stuff. So your short-term goal, I mean, your long-term goals as a senior, let's say you have a couple of goals. Well, the first one would be to get out of debt 100%. I could not see going into retirement age still having a mortgage, still having a car payment, still having all of those things. I don't want that. So right now I'm working feverishly to get rid of everything that I possibly can, or have a way that I know I'm going to have enough income to take care of those liabilities. Okay, so that may be one. Another financial goal was I might want to leave some money to my heirs.
Mhm.
Okay, so how much, it needs to be very specific. How much do you want to leave to them? Where is that money going to come from? Is it going to come from life insurance policies? Is it going to come from my savings? What is going to be the plan? Okay. Short-term savings could be I want to save, $5,000 to go on a trip 3 years from now. Well, I know 3 years is 36 months. I'm going to divide that $5,000 up by by 36 months, and that's what I'm going to need to save to accomplish that goal. So it needs to be, when we're setting goals, they can't be pie in the sky. They have to be very specific, very targeted. And that's what I say for anybody. So it doesn't really change depending on how old you are. The goals may change, but the formula is still the same.
Gotcha. The SMART goals.
Right. Smart goals. Right. Absolutely.
Gotcha. Now, with that being said, I mean, like you said, you're 60, you've learned so much. You look back and you say, man, I wish I would have done this.
Right.
With what you know today and what you're doing right now, what's your secret to combating that racial wealth gap?
Just making sure that my kids have it easier than I had it. And, just like I'm sure I had it easier than my dad, and I'm sure my dad had it easier than my grandparents. And the lady who started it all, that as far back as I can go, who I said was a slave up until the age of 10, she kind of set it all up for us. Her and her sons, they set it all up for us. And so I feel obligated. I almost feel like a steward of the property that was left, to make sure. And if I know that I have any relatives that say we ought to sell, then I need to be in position to buy them out. Not so that I can get it, but so that I make sure that it's maintained in our family for generations. So one of the things that and another thing that we have to start doing is trusting our legal, number one, getting legal advice and setting things up the right way. Like right now, I am talking to an attorney to start putting all of these assets into a trust, to where Moses Henry doesn't own the assets, and that they are actually assets of the trust. Well, why is that important? Well, let's say something happens to me, and these different medical facilities and long-term care facilities, if you don't have long-term care insurance, which is another thing that we have to start investing in, they can start attaching themselves to your assets, and eventually they can become owners of your assets because you do have an ability to pay them.
Yikes.
Right. So you have to start thinking about, a lot of people think, well, there's always tomorrow. I got time. No, you don't necessarily have time. The one thing I can honestly say without a doubt is that I have more yesterdays than tomorrows at 60. So I need to make sure that things are set up to where future generations don't have to deal with those types of issues.
I think that's the biggest thing that a lot of people forget is they don't want to write these wills and they don't want to do all this stuff. They're like, just split it even. You've got it.
Right.
It's so much more to that.
Yes.
It's better to set your family up by actually writing stuff down and saying, here's what you need to do. Otherwise, you're going to set us up for failure.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And unfortunately, I see it a lot. I see it a lot in the mortgage industry. I see it a lot because I get those calls like, hey, I need to refinance this house. Well, whose house is it? Well, it was in my mom's name. Well, has it gone through probate? And they're like, no. I'm like, well, you technically speaking, you can't refinance something you're not entitled to. So it has to be settled. You have to settle that estate. And sometimes people, like I said, here again, it's a matter of not knowing, and to basically set out to make yourself as knowledgeable as possible about all of those types of things.
Gotcha. And for my generation specifically, everyone's all big on, oh man, I want to do the side hustle. I want to make money elsewhere. I want to be my own entrepreneur. But unfortunately, the way that the society is set up is you were working 8 to 5, 9 to 6 jobs, and we kind of don't really have the time to do all of these things that we want to do to build that extra income some way, somehow.
Right.
So what is your advice to people like us that feel like we're stuck living the rat race here in America, and we're having to, if we do want to do something, we kind of have to wait until like 9 o'clock at night?
You mean for the side hustle?
Yeah, for the side hustle.
Well, it really depends. And I'll say this: I'm all about being an entrepreneur, and I've had several businesses, but I will say this: whatever you are, if it's your side hustle, you can never treat it as a side hustle because you're going to shortchange somebody, including yourself. So you have to be 100% committed to it, even to launch it, because it's sort of like a baby. It really is. I mean, it's your baby. Let's face it. And its success and its failure is dependent upon you. So number one, if you have a side hustle, um, you need to be 100% committed to it. And number two, it needs to be something you really enjoy and that you are passionate about. Because if it's just something you're just chasing the dollar for, it's going to be short lived. For example, and you know this about me, I've had a side business of being a professional DJ. I absolutely love music. So it was an easy thing for me. Now, granted, there are some parts of the business like unloading and loading up the equipment and that, but the actual music part of it, I love. So I've always been around music all of my life. And so it was a natural thing for me. It's something I was passionate about. It almost really didn't seem like work, you know. I have two daughters that believe it or not, they have businesses. They have one does knitting and crocheting, and she's making all types of stuff, but she's passionate about it. She sits around watching TV, just and I'm like, what is this? But it's something she's passionate about, and she makes stuff, and people are like, oh, can you make me one of those? And then next thing you know, somebody else tells somebody else, and somebody else tells somebody else, and then it starts getting rather large. So I just say this: if you have a side hustle, it cannot be treated as a side hustle. It has to be looked upon as being your business. Now, if what you're doing for your main source of income is being affected by it, then you have to kind of back up and reevaluate and think about, well, is it time for me to actually leave this place to fully commit to this? Because I've been there before. As I mentioned before, I was working probation and parole. And I would say there you might max out around 50, 60,000 at the time, when I was doing it. And I started my side hustle. So my side hustle was buying and flipping houses or buying and renting out houses. So I bought my first piece of rental property for like $18,000. I It was in Springfield and it needed some work. And I bought it number one, was riding through the neighborhood, and I think Watson had a for sale sign for like 45, 50,000, something like that. And I said, well, let me just throw them out a ridiculous thing. And I said, I'll give you 18,000 for it. And they said, yeah, okay. And I was like, really? You mean? All right. So I bought it. And so I ended up renting it out for a number of years for about $700 a month. So I mean, I recouped money I had in it really, really quick. And then I was able to refinance it. I think at the time it might have been worth 70, 80,000. I refinanced it and pulled cash out and bought another piece of property and bought that cash, fixed it up, it just started. It just turned into something that was really, really crazy. And so that enabled me to open up a mortgage company, actually, that I maintained on Beach Boulevard for about 10 years. And I had no idea that I would ever get to that point. But I noticed every time I would go into the bank, it was the Bank of America at the time. Well, it's Bank of America now. But every time I went in there, they was like trying to make me a loan. And I said, well, what is this all about? I knew I had good credit, but I had no idea as to why they kept trying to, And so I ended up doing my research and figuring out, well, how do banks make their money on these loans? And how do they do this? And how do they do that? And as I started, then I went to a Florida mortgage broker school or something and got licensed as a mortgage broker, and then the rest is history. But I can recall where the light bulb went off was I did a flip. I bought a house for like 45 and it had vinyl siding. So all I had to do was pressure wash it and, put new carpet in there. I think I put a couple of appliances in there. It might have cost me like maybe 5,000 to get the house up. And I ended up selling it to a veteran for like 92. And about a month later, I didn't have it, maybe a little bit over a month. And I was like, whoa. that was like $40,000. And I was like, I don't think I need to stay on a job, work all year, right? And so, that I said, I don't think I need to do that. And that's when I jumped out and went full force into, just doing the mortgage thing.
But you
And I, and I,
educated
and I
yourself.
left the state. Yes. Huh?
I said you educated yourself.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But at some point in time, it's all about risk. I mean, was it risky? Yeah, it was risky because
Yeah.
I was leaving something that was very stable with state employment. But I was jumping into something that to me was, you know, it was obviously I was able to make money really, really quick. And so you got people that's all they doing is buying and flipping houses. I mean, and they're turning them around, and they're making a really, really, really good living doing it. So I don't regret it. I'll put it that way. I don't regret it. Even with the mortgage plunging and the market just tanking in '08, '09, um, I guess I'm still standing. So I don't have a problem with that. I was able to basically pull the tin in on my business. And at the time, I went to work for Wachovia Bank
Wells
way back.
Fargo.
Okay. Shortly thereafter, about a year after that, they got swallowed up in bankruptcy and all of that kind of stuff. And Wells Fargo came in. And then I went to Bank of America, and so I've kind of done my tour with the major banks. So, but I'm still standing, and I love mortgages to this day. And as we speak right now, Florida is probably, Jacksonville, Florida in particular, is probably one of the hottest markets in the country.
Huge,
Yeah,
huge, huge.
yeah. Hmm.
Bigger than I anticipated it ever being. And I remember you were the one to tell me too, like, okay, you better get on it because they're coming. I mean, they're really flying off the market fast. You
Right,
put on an offer in a house, and the next day somebody else got it.
right. Well, I remember, and like now I'm the preferred lender for Habitax, which builds low to moderate income houses in the Jacksonville area. And I can remember, it doesn't seem like it's been all that long ago. You could buy those houses for $80,000. Now they're appraising at 140. And down in South Florida, the Habitat for Humanity houses are running probably close to 200 or slightly over.
Ooh, so you're
Right.
saying,
And
are we
these
going to
and this is
California?
and this is supposed to be affordable housing.
So
What's unaffordable housing looking like?
that's what I'm saying. Are we going to be the next California?
You could you could very well. But well, listen. Okay, so amazingly, the I just rode by that house that I flipped for 92. It's right around the corner from where we've recently been. I recently went, and it's right off Atlantic in Joandy in that general area.
Mhm.
I think it's like 270 now. Right. Right. And that was like early 2000s. Yeah. Yeah. So real estate is definitely the way to go. That's what I know. It's tangible. It's something I can feel, touch. They're not making any more land.
Right.
So
They're building on that land, so there's not enough.
right.
And that was actually going to be my next question was like, what are some other financial instruments? And your passion sounds like it's really, and your advice to everyone is real estate. That's the biggest thing that you can get yourself into.
Real estate, yes. I say diversify though. I don't put all of it into that real estate bubble or basket simply because I have seen it tank before.
We all
Now,
have.
I think it's highly unlikely that it will now because when I started in this industry, Florida was the fourth largest state in the union. Now it's the third. It's now California, Texas, and Florida. It used to be California, Texas, New York, and then Florida. So Florida is climbing. Most people, even with the hurricanes, even with the sweltering heat, they are still trying to get in here most people, when you think about retiring, you don't say, oh, I'm going to retire and go to Michigan, or I'm going to retire and go to New York. They are coming to Florida. So I don't think it's a bad move to buy real estate in Florida at
I was
all.
gonna say fires in California, snow in New York.
Right. We're,
Let's
we're,
just
we're
do hurricanes because it always passes Jacksonville anyway.
right. Or you get a warning, right?
Right.
And when the
Exactly.
people tell you, okay, it's a hurricane out there in the Atlantic, it might be 2 or 3 days, then you got time to get out of here, you
Exactly.
know?
Exactly.
But anyway, so I do say diversify. I
Mhm.
say real estate, because number one, you need to break the rent cycle. Because I don't care where you're living, where you're paying rent, you are paying a mortgage. It's just not yours,
That part.
right? And some of these rents that I'm seeing out here now, the market rate, I mean, it's just crazy. I'm seeing people 17, 18, $1,900 a month in rent. Especially don't let them be around Tinseltown in that area. And some of them are paying $2,000 a month. So I would say break the rent cycle, get in real estate, maximize 401k. If you don't have a 401k, then get into the market somehow. Get you a money market, get you a stock account or something. And also, one of the other things that I do is precious metals.
Oh,
I buy silver.
okay.
Yeah, I want it physical. Why? Because I can take that anywhere in the world. It's the world's currency, silver and gold.
Silver and gold. So you have like the gold bullions and all that fancy stuff. Hmm.
Absolutely.
That's nice.
So I would tell anybody get your safe, fireproof safe, hopefully, and yeah, accumulate some gold and silver coins. And my dad passed me a couple, so that gave me a love for it.
See, that's amazing. I think that's going to be really helpful for people to think about these things. The biggest thing is people are today getting into like that cryptocurrency, but they're not realizing the stuff that's like stable.
Right.
You might want to just consider just having that needs to be had, and that you can help with your kids in the future or any generations in the future.
Right.
Basically real estate, like you said, silver and gold, diversify in any way and shape that you can, maximize that 401k, and do what you need to do to kind of just become that budgeter and just do, like you said, we talked about tithing, right?
Right.
It gives you that dedication to say, this is how much I'm going to dedicate each month, that 10%. If you
Right.
if you can, just say, I'm going to put 10% aside for not only tithing, but 10% aside for myself.
It's discipline. Right. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And with the gold and silver coins, just to kind of let you know, and I first started buying them, gold coins back in the early 2000s. I think I was paying like $600 for one coin, one ounce coin.
Hmm.
Now it's about $2,000.
Wow.
Just to let you know, that's what spot is on gold right now. It's probably close.
Definitely, definitely. So, I mean, we talked about all of those things, and the biggest thing that I want to move into is how do you make sure that your families are set up for success with everything that you have? You talked about trust and putting in, and using the lawyers to putting it into a trust. What else?
Well, just making sure that with me, and I've shared this with you, is I have to resist. No, I don't have to resist because I don't have any hopes of being here forever in an indefinite period of time. So I have to set the property up, for example, the investment property up, and I consider the property that I have, that was their property that was left, that was passed down. I consider that to be investment property, even though I think a lot of people don't. So my thing is to get to eliminate or set it up to where I eliminate any possibility that future generations would be tempted to sell. So, in order to do that, I have to make these properties produce income so sufficient that they would say, wow, if I sold it, I'd be living this some money, right? So, I mean, if you have agricultural or if you have investment property and it's making money and your kids are getting residual income or your heirs are getting residual income from that property, why would they sell?
That part.
Right, right. So you have to set things up to where, future generations would see the value in holding on to that. And I think if any income producing property, I'm not selling. I wouldn't be tempted to sell it if I'm making money on it. So
Right. And you also have to give your kids and generations after the importance of understanding how it all works. You don't
right,
want to just slap it on their lap and say, here you go. Things
right,
happen. It happens all the time. But if they don't know what they don't know, they're
right,
going to be tricked into selling.
right, right, right. Well,
So,
that here again, that's where the trust comes in.
yeah, there you go.
The trust and the trustees. So, the way I'm going to have it set up is where you're going to have basically 3 to 4 trustees,
Mhm.
and they will have to pretty much be in agreement to do certain things. And I doubt that the 3 and the 4 that I choose will be all agreeable to selling.
Smart.
I'm going to pull some strings from the grave. No.
I believe it. I believe it. You're going to be rolling in your grave and saying, what is going on up there?
Right. But no, really, that's kind of how you have to do it. If you have a trustee and you just have one person that you leave it to and they decide, hey, I'm going to sell it, then, what have you really worked for? So I'm going to set it up to where it's a trust and they have to kind of work collectively to make sure that this thing goes smoothly.
Wow, you have given so many nuggets and great advice, Moses. I mean, personally, we talk all the time, and
Right.
with us talking all the time, you teach me something new every single time.
Well, thank you. And I get it too. I need, I receive things too. So it's all good. I mean, because I can't sit here and think that I have all the answers because I don't know things from your perspective. You don't know things from mine. So that's why it's always good to share with you.
Definitely, definitely. Do you have anything else that you would like to share with everyone on building
Um,
wealth?
no, just be be consistent.
Okay.
That's the one thing I can tell you. Be consistent, have a method to your madness. you know, like I said, if and there are some people that really I have run into that are incapable of short-term savings. For example, they fool themselves into thinking that they're saving money because they're putting $400 or $500 in their savings account every time they get paid, but then within 2 weeks they're transferring it out of their savings into their checking, and the rest is history. It's gone. It vanishes somehow mysteriously, usually in an Amazon truck. But but we have to be consistent. If you're know your weaknesses and know your strengths. I just believe if you know you cannot save on a short-term basis, then you need to maximize your long-term savings. You need to maximize it, to where it hurts, because if you touch that money, Uncle Sam is going to slap you on the hand. He's gonna say, yeah, you got a penalty and you got some interest you got to pay, and then that makes you think twice. Do I really want this money that badly?
Right.
And that's fine. That's what you want. You got to put some guardrails up, and that guardrail is a budget. That's it.
Yeah.
The guardrail is the budget and committing to it. It's no need in making and establishing a budget for yourself if you're not willing to stick to it, because you can't lie to yourself. You know what you're doing and not doing. So if you commit to, hey, my food budget is going to be 400, 500 a month, and that's it, then I can't go out and eat at Ruth Chris every weekend. I can't do certain things, right. So I think in that regard, COVID has kind of helped us, because people were actually probably doing pretty good on savings.
Right.
Because you didn't have the ability to go out and do things because you were somewhat limited. But now that we're opening up, I can imagine people's budgets are starting to feel the effects of an open society, But I would still say put the guardrails up, commit to the budget, and be very disciplined. And I think eventually, as long as you set out the right foundation, I think eventually you'll find that you're going to have success and challenge yourself to savings. It was a long time before you could see, 1,000 in your savings account, 2,000 in your savings account, 3,000, 5,000, 10,000, 15,000. I mean, some people cannot get there because they're unwilling to commit to doing it.
Mm-hmm.
They see 1,000, they say, what can I get?
Mm-hmm.
So you got to be consistent, no matter what.
I love it. I love it. No, I appreciate you so very much. I think and I hope that you all have taken so much out of this to really just think about building that legacy and that foundation for generations to come.
Right.
And hopefully you hear his perspective and you can try to put it into some of the things that you've got going on today, and budget, be consistent, and put those guardrails up, and go on and continue on to build your wealth in your own way. So
Right.
I thank you so very much.
Thank you. This was very nice.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Definitely. All right, everyone. Until next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.